Well, good morning, men. It's May the 1st. So we turn to the book of Proverbs, chapter 1, for God's daily dose of wisdom. You know, every time we start over, it's a wonderful opportunity to just kind of pause for a moment and talk a little bit about why it is that we study the book of Proverbs. The book of Proverbs is nestled into what we call the wisdom literature. And the wisdom books of the Old Testament include Job, Psalms, Proverbs, Ecclesiastes, and the Song of Solomon. Now, all those books are written in Hebraic poetry. So they're poetic books. They use poetic language and a poetic style. And all of those books kind of stand apart from the historical, legal, and prophetic books of the Old Testament. These books that comprise the wisdom literature describe the condition of man in the world, and they contain instructions for life and behavior. It's very personal books. These books are very personal. They get right into our emotions and our situations. In fact, if you go through the book of Psalms and you read through there are some excruciating psalms that talk about the condition of man and the condition of the circumstances where the psalmist is crying out to the Lord and he's just pouring out his heart and he's in anguish. And it just is so refreshing to know that God desires to hear the deepest anguish of our hearts. He desires for us to be able to pour that out to him. He wants to hear that. He wants to know that. He wants us to know that he cares so much about us that he can take our screaming and yelling at him. He can take our questions about who he is and our circumstances and all of that, the questioning and the wrestling. And he wants us to do that, to get to know him better. So it's a very personal section of the Old Testament, these wisdom books. And it's very personal from the fact that it starts in the home. In fact, if you read through Proverbs, there are instructions in there that say, don't you take the wisdom and wrap it around your head like a crown, or wear it on your around your neck like a garland. And it's about fathers teaching sons and mothers teaching sons. And it's very, very personal, and it starts in the home. And it stands in stark contrast to our current condition and our current situation, at least in this country, where people are wanting to take away the instruction from the parents and place it into the hands of the state. And I think that the book of Proverbs stands against that and says, no, this kind of instruction, this wisdom that is imparted from God needs to begin in the home. And we need to protect that. And finally, these wisdom books are extremely important because we read in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 24, but to those who are the called, that's us, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. So these books, these wisdom books in the Old Testament, reveal the nature and the character of God in many ways that he doesn't reveal in the other books of the Old Testament. And so it's really important for us to study those books. Now, if I could wrap up Proverbs chapter 1, it's actually broken up into three major sections. The first section is the purpose of Proverbs. The second section is about the enticement of sinners and how not to go there. And then the last section there is about how wisdom calls out. Wisdom is personified as a woman in the book of Proverbs, and she calls out. And the entire book can be wrapped up in verse 7. And that's what jumped off the page today. And it reads like this: the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Fools despise wisdom and instruction. Beginning of knowledge, the very beginning first steps when we're infants and we're crawling. That is a picture of what he's exempling here in Proverbs 1:7. If you're just starting out on your journey of wisdom and in your journey of getting to know God is revealed through these wisdom books, you're starting out in a crawl, and it's okay. And that beginning crawling has to do with the fear of the Lord, recognizing who he is, understanding that he is the creator of the entire universe. He breathed everything into existence. When he said, "Let there be light," everything began right there. Time itself began at that moment. And so knowing how powerful he is should instill within us a slight trepidation, maybe not so slight, because he's God Almighty, the creator of the universe. And yet, he loves us with an everlasting love. In fact, the scriptures say that a bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not extinguish. So if we're bruised, or if we're so down that the light of and the fire of our zeal towards the Lord has gotten all the way down to a smolder, he will not snuff it out. He's that tender, he's that personal, he's that very real and very present God, even though he was the one who created the entire universe. He knows the number of hairs on our head, and he loves us with an everlasting love. And that is the beginning of knowledge. My brothers and sisters, I hope you join me on this journey through Proverbs, because he's going to reveal himself. God is going to reveal himself in ways that are wonderful. And I pray that we, through that process, are transformed more into the image of Jesus, because that's what we need. We need that sanctification. That's the fancy word that people use to describe that process of becoming more like Jesus. And so I pray that you go with me on this journey, and that we together can see and understand our God just a little bit more and become like him. I love you, each and every one of you. I pray that God blesses you today, and I pray that he reveals himself to you today in wonderful and unexpected ways, because he does love you with an everlasting love. Go out and make a difference in someone's life today. God bless you.